IVM.
If you enjoy listening to IVM Likes, you should also check out our other show called Seen and the Unseen, a show hosted by Amit Verma where he discusses topics related to economics, politics, and its impact on our society. New episodes every Monday on the IVM Podcasts app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of IVM Likes. I'm in the studio here. My name is Abbas and I'm in the studio with Alika.
Hello.
And Amit.
Hey.
Alright, so in case if you're listening to this episode for the first time, what we do on this podcast is we recommend some really cool stuff that we've been reading, watching, experiencing in our lives in the first half, and on the second half we discuss about some things, we deep dive into it. So the topic for this episode is we're talking about sports movies and TV shows as well, right?
Oh really? Sports TV shows. Interesting.
Yeah, kind of. We'll get more into that in the second half. But in the first half, we're going to be recommending some pop culture stuff that we've been consuming. So let's start with you, Amit. What do you have to recommend for us today?
What I've realized is I've been doing a lot of rewatching this stuff, but I also worry if I have kind of already recommended some of this stuff instead. So let me try and fix something a little fresh. So recently, The Equalizer 2 came out, Denzel Washington movie, and it was not bad, but it did not hold a candle to the first one. That first Equalizer movie was one of the most incredible kind of action movies I've seen in a long time.
Okay. How long back did the first one come out?
I think the first one came out in 2014.
Okay.
So not that long ago, but not like, recent either.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of competence in movies, right? When characters are competent, I hate when characters are incompetent. It really irritates me.
Okay.
Do you like The Martian?
I like The Martian quite a lot.
Okay.
I really did enjoy that, right? Because it's again, you see people doing things well.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a big reason why I'm such a big fan of all the Aaron Sorkin stuff, right? Like if you look at The West Wing, which is one of the things I'm rewatching right now, one of the reasons I really like it is because these characters in it are not like, they're not stumbling and bumbling, and they're not like, they're not making stupid choices. Their choices may or may not work out. But there is always logic behind it. And I felt like The Equalizer, and there was a movie with Ben Affleck that came out a couple of years ago called The Accountant.
Yeah.
It also falls into the similar kind of space, right?
Okay.
Where what you have is you have these quote-unquote tough guys who are extremely capable at what they do. I mean, like if you look at Tom Cruise's Jack Reacher, I think the movies are terrible compared to the books. But you look at that as the same kind of character, right? They know what they're doing. They can kind of like, game out a series of actions, and then they kind of see that play through. And you see the same thing in that. So The Equalizer basically has to do with, so I'll give a very short nutshell kind of thing, right? There is a young teenage Russian prostitute who eats dinner at the same diner as Denzel Washington does every night. Okay. Denzel Washington plays this extremely OCD character who has the same kinds of routines no matter what. And so this girl comes over there all the time, and he gets to know her a little bit. And let's just say that things don't go well for that girl, and then Denzel Washington goes a little nuts on the people who don't let it go well for them.
Okay.
And, it's a straightforward revenge drama, right? I mean, there's nothing very complicated about the story of this, right? But it's just fun to watch.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would highly recommend, if you enjoy fun to watch without much... this is the, I think, the Hollywood equivalent of the 1990s to the early 2000s Govinda movies. You don't really have to apply your mind to them.
Okay.
I feel like this is that kind of movie.
So, is it extremely violent, or is it just cool to watch?
It's
because
cool
it kind of falls into the Taken, John Wick kind of.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
So more John Wick than Taken, right? Taken actually has at least the first Taken did, right? The first Taken had some stakes.
Right.
After that you realize that there were no stakes in Taken, right? John Wick doesn't have stakes, right? John Wick is just Keanu Reeves doing cool shit.
Right.
Right? And I feel like this is in that range more than it is in the Taken range.
So without giving much away, why did you think the second one didn't live up to the first one?
It felt a little looser in terms of story. Okay. It felt like, one of the cool things about the first one was that Denzel Washington's emotional attachment to the people who he was dealing with was not that high.
Okay.
It wasn't about that. It was about he saw some injustice and he saw that he needed to equalize the scales, right? In the second one, what they decided is, let's kill his best friend and make him go for revenge. And that just kind of it kind of, to me at least, it kind of killed what the story was.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, in the second one, I think the villains were a little contrived.
Okay.
In the sense that so the villain was also an ex-colleague, and I mean, like, it just became a weird. It became like instead of being about competence, it became a standard revenge drama.
Oh, okay.
And that kind of is what I didn't like about that so much.
All right.
Okay. Can I just ask, in the first one, did the girl end up saving herself? Or if that's a spoiler, you don't need to say anything.
You know what? I wish I could answer that question, but I honestly don't remember.
Okay. Because I side-eye these movies where, the female gets hurt and then the guy has to go get revenge.
But I think most...
it's very irritating.
No, so I think, but over the last 10 years, I mean, like, I get what you're saying, and it's something I've been noticing as well. What I think happens over the last 10 years is that the girl will save herself like a minute before the hero gets there. And that's become a part... that I feel like that's the new trope now. That, the girl doesn't get saved by the hero, but she saves herself just in nick of time. So there is enough time for the hero to do his action sequences, but at the same time, the girl has her agency as well.
Right.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's a better trope or if it's necessarily kind of any progress in that sense, because it just feels like you're paying lip service to the fact that, hey, she's not a damsel in distress.
Yeah.
But
it's maybe like 1% better. But, I mean, I guess we have to take that and then eventually it'll get better.
Right. Cool. I'll go next. So, right before recommending this, last time Alika told me that all you do is recommend documentaries, and I have a documentary again.
Oh my God, I called you out last time. Did nothing about it.
I don't know. I just like watching documentaries, I guess.
Okay.
So I saw this 3-part documentary called The Clinton Affair.
Okay.
How did you get time to watch a 3-part documentary in like 1 week?
I just binged it.
Okay.
So it's produced by this guy called Alex Gibney. Alex Gibney is the guy who's been making some of the most well-known documentaries in the last couple of years.
Is this the one Monica Lewinsky participated in?
Yeah. So Alex Gibney has made the Lance Armstrong documentary. While he was shooting that, the whole scandal broke out, and then he twisted it and actually made it about how he cheated.
Oh, wow, okay.
And he's made a couple of Iraq war documentaries which are really good. So this one, obviously, the name is a entendre on the whole Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton affair that happened. So interestingly, in the first part and the middle of the second part, what they do is, on the one hand, you have the typical how the politician rose to fame kind of a story going on, and concurrently he follows the women who've come out and who have actually accused Bill Clinton of harassing them, right? And in the second part, kind of both of them kind of collide. And Monica Lewinsky did participate in the making of this film. And I think the most insightful sort of opinions come from her. Because, like, for me, my first American president I remember was Bill Clinton, right? And I think the fact that George Bush's reign became this global terror thing, and then Obama came with the hope and good vibes, and then now we're going through Trump. You somehow kind of...
I noticed no commentary about Trump whatsoever needed.
I mean, we kind of leave that to everybody's imagination and interpretation, but you all probably know our stance.
Sure, but that's the thing. I think the presidents who followed Clinton kind of had, since they had more light on them or more focus on them, we kind of tend to forget that the Clinton administration wasn't devoid of controversy.
No, it
right?
was one of the most controversial things at the time. I mean,
exactly.
So I was an adult, right, at that point in time. When Clinton became president, I was... The first time I voted, I didn't vote for Clinton. I voted for, surprisingly, George H.W. Bush instead of Clinton. But when I remember at that time, like, he was considered to be such a controversial figure, right? In terms of everything, whether it is womenizing, whether it was going on Arsenio Hall on a late night thing, right? That was something that had never been done by a politician before, right? All politicians used to go on news programs. They'd go on Face the Nation. They'd go on, like, Sunday morning things. But doing a late night show was a big deal. When it comes to, like, just pure personality and stuff like that, the oratory, right? They hadn't seen an orator like that since, honestly, John F. Kennedy. Reagan was a good speaker, but Reagan was old by the time he became a president, right? John F. Kennedy was the last time they saw an orator like that. So, I mean, like, Clinton at the time, I mean, they were calling it the new Camelot and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, so like I said, the more insightful stuff comes from Monica Lewinsky. She actually describes this one instance where the FBI guys actually cracked in on her, like when she was actually taking a walk in a mall, and slowly how the build-up happened. And the surprising thing is, while all of this was happening, she was still a hardcore Clinton supporter. Like, she didn't want him to lose the presidency. She didn't want to be the person who brings down the president. So it's kind of like a catch-22 situation where wrong things have happened to you. You are going through all of that, and yet you still want the man responsible for it to stay in power. So that, and of course, we all grew up with, Monica Lewinsky jokes were like the run-of-the-mill.
Standard,
yeah, it was standard. So just in hindsight, how do we look back at that? How much do we hold ourselves, when I say ourselves, of course, of that...
people like me.
Yeah,
no jokes. Even though I didn't vote for Clinton initially, by the time I came around to his second election, I was a hardcore supporter. Right? And I made all the stupid Monica Lewinsky jokes, and I had all of those attitudes, right? Because it was a different time. You didn't realize what was what at that time.
Right.
And I absolutely regret, the way I kind of dismissed her.
Yeah.
And all the rest of the accusers at that time, right? Because it was... some of them, see, the thing is that when you read in newspapers that these are not credible accusers, right? And you see that all over the place. That kind of hardens your own thinking process, right? That, Paula Jones is not a credible accuser. The Juanita Broderick, particularly, was considered to be like a joke in the news, right? And now, of all the accusations, her accusation was the most serious at the time, and it's being looked at credibly now. And
so this was like a confirmation bias that the newspapers...
I don't know if it was confirmation bias. I think it was just a different time, right? I think that the way that you looked at these kinds of things at that point in time, it just was different. I'm not using the word... most of the time when people use the word woke, they use it sarcastically. I'm not really using it like that. I mean that really legitimately right now. That the way that we approach gender issues generally, the way we approach sexuality issues generally, the way we approach discrimination generally has just changed tremendously. Now, I think that there are problems with the way we approach it today, right? I think that there are issues and that are on the lines of going too far. But I think even though we are going too far in one direction, it's good that we're going so far in one direction because we're way too far on the other side. And even people who consider themselves progressive at that time,
right,
by today's standards, they would
fail
not. They would fail to be
just
match up to the standards. So another interesting thing that I learned was that the independent counsel called Ken Starr, who was actually investigating the fraud charges against Bill and Hillary, so he didn't have much to go after them in that regard. So he kind of pumped a lot of his power behind the Lewinsky scandal, and there were these clandestine lawyers who were helping him do that, and one of those lawyers was actually Brett Kavanaugh, who was now known for completely different things. So for me, a lot of things that I wasn't aware of came out. So,
but that was a big reason why you saw so much Clinton support on the people on the left that side, because it was transparently obvious that Ken Starr was going after Clinton because he wanted to go after Clinton. He had nothing. There was a Whitewater scandal, which is supposedly the basis of his investigation. There was nothing over there. So now he's trying to find anything he can to just tar and feather Clinton with, right? And that, because of that perception, you kind of were like, your reflexive, this was... there was a reflexive disbelief of the accusers coming forth at that point in time, because you're just like, man, this guy who's talking about this is full of crap. So, sorry, I didn't mean to hijack your recommendation.
No, so I highly recommend this. It's a very not by the numbers in a good way. It actually lays bare all the things that happened back then. And like I said, it actually gets to the people from the Clinton administration, and the people on the other side interview some of the most key players who were involved in this. So check it out. It's called The Clinton Affair. And that's my recommendation for this week. What about you, Alika? What do you have?
I'm going to keep it super short. I don't actually get that much time to consume media because mostly I'm trying to create stuff. So there's very little time
to... That seemed like a dig.
It is a dig, isn't it?
It's not a dig, guys.
We are rewatching stuff and she doesn't have time to watch nothing.
I genuinely don't. Like, I spend a month watching a TV series. I don't understand how you people finish it in like less than 2 days. It's weird. But so, hey, when I'm creating stuff, I like to listen to things Not podcasts, because those are distracting to me when I'm creating. Otherwise, I do like to listen when I'm traveling. But I'm going to recommend a YouTube channel. It's just called The Miracle Forest, and it's basically really nice ASMR for you to put on in the background and then just go ahead and create.
You might want to expand on what ASMR means.
Okay, I am going to bring up...
I've never heard those letters used together.
Are you joking? Okay, well, I'll tell you what ASMR means. It's a very long... yes, it is... Give me 2 seconds. Autonomous sensory meridian response, which is basically when certain sounds kind of like trigger that really nice spot on the back of your head, which basically is like, all the small strands of your hair stand up. It's very soothing and stuff.
Okay.
It's really...
It can have the opposite effect as well, right?
I mean, there are some which...
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Now I remember hearing about this. Yeah, like the scratching of blackboard.
That would be like the opposite end of ASMR, but mostly ASMR is used for, like very keeping your emotions calm, keeping you focused, because it's a repetitive sound. So I like to put on some repetitive sounds in the background when I'm doing any drawing work.
So give me an example of what kind of sounds you would be hearing.
So I'll give you an example from this YouTube channel, because they have like a whole bunch of really neat videos which is all in themes.
Okay.
So yesterday I put on one which was just called the chocolate shop.
Okay.
You could hear like the sweet wrapper being unwrapped. You could hear like the thick drip of the chocolate fountain. It was great. I was super hungry at the end of it, but it was great. They also had like a really nice one called the Mysterious Forest, which had like just trees rustling. You could hear like vague footsteps in the background. It was super peaceful.
Okay.
Definitely highly recommend it. If you want to have something just going on in the background to keep you calm and chill and focused on whatever work you're planning to do.
Does what you hear influence what you're drawing? This is just a personal question.
Sometimes, yeah. So the mood kind of comes across. I notice that if I'm listening to a lot of if I do listen to music when I'm drawing, if it's a little heavy rock, my colors tend to be a little harsher.
Right.
But if I listen to a little mellow stuff, then it's, a little bit more pastel-y.
Oh, okay. Nice.
It's really nice though. It's great for having on in the background. Keeps you chill.
What's the channel called again?
It's called The Miracle Forest.
Alright, cool. So those were our recommendations. We'll recap them once more. Amit, you recommended?
I recommended The Equalizer with Denzel Washington.
I recommended the documentary The Clinton Affair, and Alika, you had?
I had a YouTube channel called The Miracle Forest.
Alright, before we go into a break, we have a guest recommendation from Meghnad. So let's listen in what he had to recommend.
Hi, I'm Meghnad and I have 2 recommendations for you today. One is by a Japanese author which I have been fanboying over for a while, which is Kigo Higashino. He is a crime novelist and he has written he's been writing in Japanese for years, but they're getting translated into English. He wrote that very famous book, The Devotion of Suspect X. You should read that, but there are many more. I'm recently reading the new one, which is called Newcomer. It's a story about this detective who is investigating a crime, but it is told from the perspective of various suspects. So it's a very fun read, and it's like all of Kigo Higashino's books are just mind-bending. So please read that. Please read his other books. I think you will love it if you're a crime fiction enthusiast. The other recommendation, which is very simple, is Annihilation of Caste by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. If you haven't read it, why haven't you read it yet? Please do read it, because it talks about Dr. Ambedkar's perspective on how we can solve the ever-present problem of caste and how the caste system has perpetuated our country, and his ideas about annihilation of caste. So please, if you haven't already, read it. It's a small book. It's available everywhere. And I think it should be essential reading for every Indian.
So that was Meghnad's recommendation. You can hear him on the show How to Citizen every Tuesday. He has some really cool guests over and they discuss the 8th Standard Civics textbook. So check that out. Also, one of the recommendations that he gave, which was the Annihilation of Caste, is also the basis of one of our Pulyabazi episodes. So check that out as well. And on that note, we'll take a short break. And when we come back, we will discuss sports, movies and TV shows.
Hello, it's been another great week on IVM Podcast. If you aren't following us on social media, please make sure you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We've been running this thing for the last few weeks, and we're going to keep doing it. If you are listening to an interesting show that you're enjoying, pause it, take a screenshot, tag us on your Instagram story, and drop us a comment, and we will post that to our own Instagram story. So I want to tell you about a new show that we're launching. It's called Ganatantra. It is hosted by Saryu Natarajan and Alok Prasanna Kumar. They discuss how politics goes beyond intrigue in elections and its implications in everyday life. I think you'll really enjoy that. Also starting on the 4th of February, we're launching a new show with Ambi Parmeshwaran. It's called The Sponge Podcast. He talks about all the invaluable lessons he learned from his 40 years of experience in advertising. Speaking of Ambi, he's also on the Filter Coffee podcast with Karthik Nagarajan this week. They discuss the importance of data in advertising. It's a really, really insightful conversation, which I think you would enjoy. On The Seen and the Unseen, Amit talks to the legendary Tyler Cowen, writer of the renowned blog Marginal Revolution. They talk about his book Stubborn Attachments and Moral Philosophy. On How to Citizen, we're on Chapter 3, Why We Need a Parliament. Joining Meghnad and Shreyas for this episode is comedian Prashasti Singh. She brings her insight of growing up in Amethi and being witness to political theatre in UP. On the season finale of Echoes of India, we take a roller coaster ride through 600 years of Indian history and get a brief summary of the Gupta Empire. Look out for season 2 coming soon. This has been a great season of that show. If you haven't checked it out, you should check it out from the start. Now you can binge it. Here's what's in store for you on our regional language shows. On the Hindi film show Cinemaya, director Paromita Vora joins Swati to talk about her documentaries, her directorial decisions, and the politics behind camera. On our Marathi podcast Golgappa, Trupti is joined by actress Gitanjali Kulkarni. They talk about the charm of theatre and Gitanjali's NGO initiatives. And with that, let's get you back to your show. Welcome back to IVM Likes, and we're going to be talking about sports movies. Abbas, you want to go first?
Cool.
Wait, before we start this, I have to ask, what do you guys think constitutes a sports movie? Is it when it's based on the sport itself, or is it like when it's based on one singular person and their life outside the sport? Does that also count as a sport
I think a movie which has sports as its background environment qualifies as a sports movie, because my primary recommendation is not a movie about athletes.
Okay, so you're okay with like Die Hard being a Christmas movie, so this would, whatever you say.
Yeah, I would say Die Hard is okay. I would call Die Hard a Christmas movie.
Okay,
Yeah.
just checking.
Yeah.
There are
Okay.
two camps on
Yeah.
this.
Cool.
No, they're not. There is me and they're the wrong people.
I mean, there's still two though.
No, okay, yeah. But there's only one right answer.
Sure.
Okay.
So when you said sports movies, the first one that came into my head, and I asked them, like, does Space Jam count as a
Yes.
sports
It's
movie?
It does.
absolutely
It's the best.
101% it counts as a sports
All
movie.
right, so that probably would be my favorite sports movie of all
Okay.
time, because it kind of hits all the right thing. It's a cartoon, it's also a comedy, it's also a sports movie.
Yes.
It
And
also had amazing animation for its time, guys.
Yeah.
They did real life action with animation and made it look so good.
Well, and they had such an amazing... It was such a fun movie to
It was a
watch,
lot
right?
of
I mean, it was
fun,
just
yeah.
so much fun to watch. We're waiting for the new Space Jam, no? LeBron.
I don't know how that's gonna be.
No, I don't
I'm
think that.
interested.
Listen, it's not like Space Jam was like, this kind of piece
Yeah,
of
I know.
cinematic art,
Yeah,
right? It
that's
was
true.
just really fun to watch.
Yeah.
We'll see a new movie with a whole bunch of new NBA players and a whole bunch of new monsters, and it'll be fun
Wait,
to watch.
is it still with the Looney Tunes, or is it with a different cast of cartoons?
I'm not
If
sure.
it's Warner Brothers, then I'm
it
sure
must
it's
be
gonna
Looney
be
Tunes.
Looney
Yeah,
Tunes,
it
yeah.
must be Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they'd mess
Oh,
with that
can
too
they
much.
do it with like all the kid Looney Tunes?
Sure, right into them.
Yeah.
Another sports movie I love is this film called Field of Dreams.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
If you build it, they will come.
Exactly, yeah. So one of the things I don't follow baseball at
Wrong
all.
sport,
So
yes.
if a movie can make me care about the film and the characters despite me not knowing anything about the sport, then I'm really impressed by it.
Interesting.
So yeah,
Have you ever seen Nine Men Out?
no.
Okay, so Nine Men Out is the story of the Shoeless Shoe Jackson, the character of Ray Liotta in Field of Dreams. It's about the gambling scandal that they got on. That's another really good movie.
All right.
Yeah.
What about you guys? What sports movies do you?
So I watched a few. I didn't realize how many I'd watched actually. But one of my favorites was Invictus. It was directed by Clint Eastwood, whom I don't like now, but he still made a good movie then.
He has made a lot of good movies.
Yeah, but I still hate him now.
He still made good movies.
Yeah, and it starred Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon.
Damon,
And it
yes.
was about the South African rugby team, especially as they were coming out of the era of apartheid. And that era is fascinating to me. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I really enjoyed South African history. So that whole scenario of how the team was just coming out of the whole apartheid ban, and then, they were hosting the World Cup, and how their fans hated their own team because it was so deeply rooted in the whole white supremacy, not white supremacy, but they'd never allow colored players
yeah.
into
Right.
the team. So, it was really interesting. It was very politically charged. They had a lot of scenes with Nelson Mandela because obviously during I think it was 92 or 95.
Yeah, 93, I think.
I've
Not sure.
forgotten which
Yeah.
year, but early 90s World Cup. which the South African, which was hosted by South Africa. And the South African team was preparing for it, and I think they had a singular black player in that team, and how they went and got the support of Nelson Mandela, basically because he wanted to make that push for having a team with different colored people in it, and also having a little bit more harmony between the white folk and the black folk.
Right.
So he was a big supporter of the South African rugby team at that point, called the Springboks. And it was a very inspirational movie to see them. Spoilers, they won the World Cup. Yeah. It's a 20-year-old spoiler now. But yeah, is it a spoiler if it's a real life event?
It's not a spoiler.
Okay.
Yeah. There has to be statute of limitations on spoilers.
Yeah, I redact that spoiler alert. But yeah, so they won the World Cup. It was a really fascinating movie to see the journey that they went through to get to the way they won that World Cup. It was very fascinating.
So my favorite sports movie is probably Moneyball.
Okay.
Oh, I saw that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So written by Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the director, but it was a big name director as well. Was it Steven Soderbergh?
No, it wasn't Soderbergh.
But it was a big name director. Based on a book by Michael Lewis, again, fantastic writer. Brad Pitt and Philip Seymour Hoffman and basically murderous row of actors, right? It was so the basic idea behind the movie was, and I guess that's all I've seen it, but still, I guess we're telling other people. The basic idea behind the movie is how do you use statistical analysis to create a baseball team in non-traditional ways?
Right.
And I really like that. I like a lot of these behind the scenes movies. I was just thinking about the movies that I like the most from sports movies perspective, and there are a lot of these behind the scenes things, right? So I love Moneyball. There's another movie called Draft Day with Kevin Costner that came out a couple of years ago, which was an NFL behind the scenes look at the NFL draft. Then there was this one as well. I like a lot of these kinds of Jerry Maguire. That was the other one I was thinking about, right? Sports. It's a sports movie.
I know.
It is a sports movie.
I know.
I mean, I love the behind the scenes around this stuff, right? I think that's a really interesting thing. And the other movie that I wanted to mention, since we're talking about sports movies, was White Men Can't Jump.
Okay.
I've never heard of that.
You have never seen White Men Can't Jump? You've never heard of White Men Can't Jump?
No.
Oh my God.
I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it.
Oh my goodness.
Is it a Olympics racing movie?
No, it is not.
Okay,
it is a basketball movie.
Oh, okay.
It is based in the... So it's an early 90s movie. It's got two main characters in it. One played by Woody Harrelson, the other played by Wesley Snipes.
Okay.
Wesley Snipes is a basketball hustler on the courts of Los Angeles. Woody Harrelson is also a basketball hustler from the courts of Los Angeles. They first come into conflict with each other so when Wesley Snipes sees Woody Harrelson, he thinks he's gonna suck, right? And so then he kind of tries to hustle him out. Turns out that Woody Harrelson is actually really, really good. And then they become friends and they work together. And then there's a whole, it's just such a fun movie. It's got, it is how Your Mama jokes became popular in this world.
Okay.
Oh.
So I mean, I'm not saying that there weren't Your Mama jokes before this, but this is the one that really kind of got it into it really brought it into the popular culture. Very good, made by a very good director who's made a number of different sports movies. A guy named Ron Shelton, who had made Bull Durham before that, and he had made, I think he was a director of the first Major League as well.
Okay.
So really, really good director on sports movies, and just a ton of fun. It also how Rosie Perez became really famous. Well, actually, no, she did the Spike Lee movie before that, but this was again another place where she got really famous.
All right. So Moneyball was directed by Bennett Miller, who also made Foxcatcher, which was a film about wrestling.
Yes.
So
have you noticed a lot of sports movies have been up at the Oscars?
Yeah, they have been. So I was coming to that. Like a lot of, when you Google sports movies, you'll find a lot of boxing movies, right? You'll have Raging Bull, you have all the Rockies.
Yeah.
$1 Million Baby.
$1 Million again. So see, I don't consider $1 Million Baby a sports movie, because the sport is just the inciting incident on which the rest of the second half is based on. So it's more about the human triumph of the person or not.
I feel like that's probably why it gets to the Oscars, because it's a very feel good.
But that's why
won thing.
That's what sports movies are, right? I mean, like that's what sports are, right? I mean, like if you think about it, why do you watch sports? You're looking for human competition, right? So I mean, like if you look at that, I think that's I mean, like I see the parallel between that. I don't think that. To me, a sports movie, I would give it the broadest possible interpretation, right? And I would think the $1 Million Baby absolutely is a sports movie, because the thing that what sports does, it sets up a framework of competition and sets up a framework of winning and losing without necessarily having to kill.
Yeah,
which is what you have in a lot of most of the movies. Wins and losses are decided by who lives and who dies. Right over here, you have wins and losses and black and white wins and losses. Right, you're either going to win or you're going to lose, and that's it. And what that does is sets up dramatic stakes at a really kind of interesting level, which is very tough to kind of do without life or death struggles.
But then does that make the Fast and the Furious also sports movies? They are about racing.
Yeah,
But I don't know if it's not like a legalized sport, is it?
It doesn't have to be legal, right? Because I mean, like if you think about it, Lagan wasn't legal cricket, right?
Yeah, but it had some rules.
Yeah.
I don't feel like Fast and Furious had a lot of rules.
White men can't jump is street basketball. I mean, like Lagan was like cricket before cricket was really being played in an organized way all over the place.
But then, I mean, in Lagan's defense, it was still, the white men were still playing it as it's still played today. And it was just the villagers learning the game. And then the reward at the end of it was still...
The timing of it was before organized cricket really took off, right? I mean, like the white men might have been playing it the way it plays today. But I mean, like organized cricket took off in the late 1800s. Like
as in countries playing each other?
No, even first class cricket and stuff like that, right? I think if I'm not mistaken, first class cricket really took off in like the post 1860.
So the film was set in 1893.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I mistook that then. I thought the film was set before the revolution.
Oh, was it? Okay,
I mean, I can look it up.
I could be wrong about this, but I know if that's the case, then my point is out the window. So my point is out the window if that's the case. I thought it was set right before the revolution.
Mutiny.
Yeah,
okay,
the mutiny.
Maybe then I'm wrong.
I could be wrong too. I mean, like I don't know that. Okay, you're wrong. I'm wrong.
One of my favorite Hindi sports movies, Jo Jeeta Wahi Sikandar.
That counts as a sports
movie. Of course it does. It has a nail-biting finish.
That's true.
Which involves a race.
Oh man, I watched this like in 7th standard. Yeah. My school took me to watch it.
It was a fantastic one. So I thought of 4 Bollywood sports movies. I thought all of them were great. And I can't think of more. I'm sure there are, right? We spoke about Lagan, we spoke about Jo Jeeta, Chak De, and Dangal.
Okay, Dangal I haven't seen.
I just want to point out real quick, Lagan was set in 1893.
It was, right? Yeah, yes. So post the mutiny.
Yes. Okay.
I don't know if you've seen this really cheesy movie that Devanand made called Awal Number.
I did.
Which had Amir Khan, who becomes a really famous cricketer.
Yes.
And it was
Kimi Katkar was in it, right? Or
I
something
guess,
like
yes.
that. It was it was some not very good heroine. And
Aditya Pancholi was in it, who played the sort of the villain character who was the...
Actually, there was also a rip-off of Brewster's Millions with Nasruddin Shah.
Chamatkar?
No. Chamatkar was also somewhat cricket.
Chamatkar also had cricket, yes.
This is called Malamal.
Malamal, yes. Malamal, in fact, had Sunil Gavaskar and I guess Sandeep Patil doing cameos in the film.
Yeah.
Alika has no idea what
I know a little bit.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Gosh.
Malamal was this film, Satish Shah and Nasruddin Shah, I think.
I think it was. Oh, Satish Kaushik or Satish Shah?
I think Satish Shah.
Satish Shah, okay. Yeah, Satish Shah.
And they get, I think, 1 crore rupees or something, and they have to spend it in a week.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But there are conditions. You can't do this. You can't
just go and buy an apartment.
You can be creative.
No, it's actually it's a good challenge, right? So there's an American movie called Brewster's Million with Richard Pryor in it, which is the same story, right?
Oh, okay.
And he's a minor league baseball player, and he gets like a couple of $1 million, and if he needs to spend it all in a couple of weeks to get the big inheritance.
Oh.
So this is like a portion of the inheritance, and if you can spend it all without no buying property, no buying expensive cars, no buying you can't do that kind of stuff.
Sit and fund everybody's Kickstarter.
Basically, yeah. I think that would be the way to do it today.
Yeah. I'd do it. But most of these movies which you've just listed, they're kind of fictional sports movies, right? Because they're not chronicling an actual incidents which happened.
Yeah.
Like, I, Tonya is not fictional.
I, Tonya is not fictional. Yeah, that's
I don't
also
know-
a very interesting
Which one,
movie.
sorry?
I,
I,
Tonya.
Tonya.
Oh, okay.
About Tonya Harding.
Tonya Harding.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
yeah.
don't know if $1 Million Baby is fictional or not,
Million
because I never
Dollar-
watched it.
I don't think it's fictional. Sorry, I think it is fictional.
It is fictional,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
In the Indian context, then all these biopics that have been made on Dhoni and Azhar.
Right.
Yeah, even
based-
Dangal for that matter.
Even Dangal, based on
Right.
real people. Yeah.
But I don't think that can be this, right? I mean, like, cause even, so it's like like classic sports movies, right? Any Given Sunday is a classic sports movie.
Okay.
It's a movie based on NFL football, but there is no basis in reality to it, right?
Right. I mean, they are just those two sorts which I know
Yeah.
of. There are ones which are based on real life incidents, and there are ones which are completely fictional, which, for the record, are so fun to watch.
Yeah.
All those ridiculous
Oh,
fictional
yeah.
sports movies are amazing.
What was,
Can I just point out, I know this is probably a really ridiculous recommendation, but I really like Shaolin Soccer, you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
I was thinking of something similar. What was the movie made by the South Park guys?
South Park, guys.
Yeah, the South Park guys, Matt and Trey Stone.
I
They
don't
made
know.
a sports movie about a made-up sport.
Really?
Yes.
Was it about Calvin ball or Quidditch?
Basketball.
Basketball. Well,
Basketball.
that's
I
close,
have
I
not
guess.
heard about
It
this. I
was
have to
a
check this
combination
out.
of basketball and baseball.
Okay.
It was a ludicrous, ridiculous sport, but it was a very, very funny movie.
Nice.
There was also this movie that came out last year about John McEnroe and his competitor. I forget it. I think
Jimmy Connor.
maybe. I think Andy Samberg played one
No,
of
no,
the...
Bog, Beyond
Bog,
Bog.
yeah.
Beyond Bog.
That was also a good
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
Even Rush by Ron Howard.
Rush
the
by Ron
F1
Howard.
movie. was
Speaking
really
of
good.
racing movies, Days of Thunder and Talladega Nights. Two
Talladega
opposite
Nights,
ends, but I
yes.
mean, like, both were great movies.
Yeah.
So lots of sports movies.
Yes.
I also have another very masala but real fun sports movie. Bend It Like Beckham.
I like
You
it.
guys,
Yes.
It's
I
so
like it.
good.
It's a good film.
I like it. I enjoy that movie.
I really want to rewatch it.
It's an old movie now. It's been like, I think it came out like what, late 90s, early 2000s, something
came
like
out
that.
in
2000s, I think, yeah.
2004 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
A long time ago.
Wow,
Like,
finally.
I think Keira Knightley was 22 in it.
Okay.
Yeah, before Keira Knightley was a star. So.
Hey, no, so dude, then no, because Keira Knightley was in this
Pirates of the Caribbean.
No, dude, she was in the first Star Wars movie.
Keira,
She-
but
she
back
wa-
then she was an unknown.
No, but she got billing on that, right? She played Natalie Portman's
Yeah,
double,
yeah.
and that came out at the same time as this came out, and that
So
came out
that
in
came out in
2001.
99. No, Phantom Menace came out in 99.
2000.
So this must have been early
Wait.
2000s.
Did it not come out in 2001? Did
No,
it come in
2000. It
99?
came out in 99, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember clearly.
Okay.
I don't remember any of
Uh,
this. Probably because I've blocked that movie out of my mind.
You know someone, this is totally off topic, but Topher Grace, the guy from the 70s
Yes.
show, he's actually re-edited all three prequels into one movie.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and it's
interesting.
It's,
it would
it's doing
be good, I think.
Yeah, it was like
Because-
there's one good movie in all three of them.
So are poker movies sports movies?
Yeah, why not?
Huh?
I guess competition stakes.
So then, actually, you know what? I think I might want to change my favorite movie. My favorite movie is probably Rounders.
Okay.
It's a movie with Matt Damon, John Malkovich, Ed Norton Jr. is in it. It's got what else is in it? There are a lot. Again, like a really
Lot of
big star
people.
cast. Yeah,
Aaron Sorkin also made a poker movie, Molly's Game.
I
Did
like
you see
that.
it?
I saw
Okay.
that. That is what I should have recommended. Sorry, cut that part out. I saw that weekend. I really enjoyed that.
What about films about like mountaineering and rock climbing and stuff?
Cliffhanger.
Do they count as
But those-
sports movies?
I don't
Only
think.
if there's a competitive element
Yeah,
to
I
it.
don't think Cliffhanger does, right? Because Cliffhanger, he is a guide. He's not really. They're not playing sports.
If
What
it's
about a
like
film
man versus nature is different from man versus
Have you
man.
guys seen Vertical Limit? This Chris O'Donnell film.
I feel like I have.
It's
Same.
about two
It's a skydiving
factions
movie.
who want to climb the K2.
Oh no, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, and
It sounds
it's,
familiar to me. I may
Yeah,
have
it
seen
used to be on AXN all the time. Once
Yeah,
upon
that's
a
why
time.
I've seen it. Because I kept seeing on AXN next Vertical
Vertical
Limit.
Limit. Yeah,
Okay.
it was a decent film. Yeah. Or any sports we've skipped?
I don't know.
I
think
actually really liked the Quidditch scenes in the Harry Potter films. I think they did it
definitely
really well.
a sports movie. The fourth
Not,
one,
not the entire movie, but
Goblet of Fire, is totes a sports movie. It revolves
yeah.
around
A
Victor
tournament.
Crumb.
There's some kids movies which we haven't talked about, like sports movies, right?
Air Bud.
Huh? Well, yeah, Air Bud. I was actually thinking Bad News Bears.
I have not heard of that.
You really never heard of Bad News Bears?
No.
Very fun kids sports movie. It's about like a ragtag group of misfits who become the Little League champions.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
That's great.
There was a really, really funny film where Will Ferrell is the coach of a kids team. I'll have to Google this.
Okay.
I don't know.
In the meantime, I could talk about another one. There was the Mighty Ducks.
I was just going to say
Yeah.
that Will Ferrell just reminded me of Mighty Ducks, and that's it.
Emilio Estevez as the coach.
Yeah,
That was a fun movie too.
yeah.
So-
That was on ice hockey, right?
That was ice hockey, yes.
Another sport which we are extremely familiar with here in tropical India.
But we've covered every sport if you think about it. We've talked about a football game. So have we spoken about any kind of... So football as in football. Football is Bend It Like Beckham.
Yeah.
NFL, we spoke about Any Given Sunday. We spoke about Draft Day.
We didn't speak about Any Given Sunday, actually.
Well, I brought it up.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I just brought it up in context. Right? I didn't really speak about it. But I brought it up.
Basketball
Cricket,
has
we
plenty.
spoke about Azhar, or rather we mentioned
Yeah.
Azhar, we mentioned Dhoni, we mentioned Lagan,
Lagan and Awal Number.
Awal Number, Malamal.
So that film is called Kicking and Screaming.
Did
the,
we do any
Will
sports
Ferrell
TV
film.
shows?
I was thinking about this.
Are
So
there sports
Friday
TV
Night
shows?
Lights.
Ah, yes.
Is it a sport?
Yes, it absolutely is.
The Aaron Sorkin sports show that he did.
I don't know. Would you call that a sports TV? Is that a sports show or is that a TV, a show about a TV show?
But then again, it's kind of the same, right? Like in Moneyball isn't about sport, but it's about
the
behind the
creation
scenes
of the sport, right? Whereas over here, it's about the creation of a TV show.
Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, again, I love that show. I've probably
Right.
seen that, the 2 seasons of that, like multiple times, right?
Mm.
I think that's one of the best, and again, it was Aaron Sorkin's first television excursion,
Yeah,
right? So, I mean,
yeah.
it's absolutely brilliant. But, I don't know if I would consider it a sports show.
Okay.
What other sports shows do you guys know?
So Amazon Prime did
The cricket thing,
the
no?
cricket show recently, one of their originals.
Never saw that.
I saw like the first 5 minutes.
Even
and
Netflix did something right now, no?
Selection Day.
Selection
oh, yeah.
Day.
Which I read the book and the show was actually pretty dull as compared
Okay.
to the. I recommended the book on an episode of Likes.
Okay.
And the book actually does a very good job of telling the story from different perspectives. So the players, the boys who are the talented boys, are from an underprivileged point of view.
Okay.
Then the people who are investing in them are like really super rich, so you
Right.
get to see from their point of view. And the show, I saw the first 2 episodes. It's just very dull. It doesn't really have any high points, and it's not very well written.
You know, I
So,
think
yeah.
that's one of the failings I've seen in a lot of Indian Netflix series, is with the exception of Sacred Games.
Yeah.
You know, everything feels a little flat because they're trying to undramatize things.
Right.
And same with Amazon Prime shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they're so worried about being Bollywood-esque
Mm-hmm.
that they kind of that they fall a little, they make things a little flatter than they need to be.
Okay.
But again, you want, you
Yeah.
know, when we're watching something, you want like a little bit of
Masala.
in there, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I know like a couple, I'm just going to throw it out real quick. There are a couple of anime on sports.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a whole genre of manga and anime which are sports based. Like it's
Okay.
a whole genre on its own. I've not watched, but I do know about. There's one on ice skating called Yuri on Ice.
Okay.
There's one on swimming called Free. I don't know if Speed Racer counts as a sports anime.
I think Speed Racer does. Speed Racer
Kind of
does.
does,
I
yeah.
think
Yeah.
it does.
So that's
If we
a sports
count
anime.
Talladega Nights and if we count
Yeah.
Days of Thunder and we count those kinds of movies, then Speed Racer counts.
Sure. So that's a couple of anime if you guys are into sports and animation.
All right, so those were our thoughts about our favorite films and TV shows on sport. Do write into us and tell us your favorite films and TV shows or even books on sport, and we shall mention them on a future episode of IVM Likes. You can follow IVM Podcasts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at IVM Podcasts on all 3. You can follow us personally on social media as well. You can follow me at Abbas Momin on Twitter. Alika?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Cape Fox Alex.
Amit?
I am Doshi Amit on Twitter.
All right, so we'll see you on next week's episode of IVM Likes. Do write into us and let us know what you'd like us to talk about. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Filter coffee is a fascinating beverage. You need to pick the right beans, blend them in the right proportion, roast them to perfection, and slow brew at the right temperature to get the perfect cup. Which is exactly like great conversations as well. You need to track down the most interesting minds, get them into their zone, and settle down for an unhurried, unscripted chat. And coffee for me is always, always, always best enjoyed with friends. I'm Karthik Nagarajan, and do share my table as I meet some of the most interesting people I know and sit them down for a strong cup of coffee and an even stronger conversation. Join me every Wednesday for a freshly brewed episode. This is not frappe. This is the Filter Coffee Podcast.
Family businesses get a bad rap. At one time, they were looked down on for getting rich, for being too ambitious. Today, they're still looked down on, but for not being ambitious enough. Not agile enough, not modern enough, too traditional in their mindset. The biggest brands and business houses in the country started out as humble family businesses. It's the way India has done business. Join Sonu Bhasin in conversation with stalwarts of Indian family businesses on the Inheritors podcast series by Bloomberg Quint. Discuss the highs and lows, the needs and pressure points of building a business legacy that spans generations.